So it's day 102 of President Trump's 4 to 6 week war in Iran. President Trump claims that actually a peace deal is about to be reached. But is it? Harsh reality, it's not the first time that President Trump has claimed that a peace deal is imminent. In fact, since the middle of March, there's over 16 times that he's actually made that claim. Now, to be fair, talks seem to be progressing well between Iran and America. After all, there's lots of common ground between them. Not only do they both need the Strait of Hormuz opened, they both want to see the war ending, and they both recognise that some form of memorandum of understanding is the way to conclude the conflict. The challenge, of course, is you need some form of ceasefire in place to enable them to focus on that action. Now, there's been a number of tit-for-tat actions between Iran and America over the last few days, but most notably, the Americans lost an Apache helicopter last night. We do know it was lost over the strait to the east of Oman. We also understand that 2 crew members survived and were rescued, according to US Central Command, by an uncrewed surface vessel. Now, the US Navy operates a number of these from a range of about 16 feet to about 135 feet long. I stress we don't know how the rescue was conducted, but the really important story here is if those 2 crew members had been recovered by the Iranians, it would have handed a propaganda coup to the Iranians. So you can understand why the Americans shrouded the whole operation in secrecy. That combat search and rescue operation was very successful, but it was a great benefit that actually they were recovered by America and not by Iran. But of course, the core issue here is actually about Israel does not want the peace deal done between America and Iran to include Israel's offensive against Hezbollah. Prime Minister Netanyahu's #1 priority is the protection of its citizens. And over the last 80 years, there's been tensions between Iran and with Israel. Over that time, Hezbollah, the proxy of Iran, has regularly conducted rocket attacks against settlements in northern Israel, and periodically Israel pushed the Hezbollah forces out of southern Lebanon and after most recently up to the Litani River. But we understand this time it looks like Prime Minister Netanyahu's ambition may be significantly further north. But actually, if we zoom in a little bit further, we can see that Israel's also issued some evacuation orders for the region of Tyre, including the Christian quarter, the first time they've done that. And what they're trying to do is clear the area here. Now, all of this is meant to be a ceasefire in place, but actually it's clearly a ceasefire that's been imposed. Israel's actions on the ground look as if they're preparing for a return to hostilities. In fact, Prime Minister Netanyahu has already claimed the war is not yet over. So where does this leave President Trump's strategy for the Iran war? Well, Trump has claimed that actually the Strait of Hormuz will be opened in the next few days and that there are no major sticking points exist between the two sides. But it's worth remembering that President Trump's objective of this war was to stop Iran developing a nuclear weapon. And there's no evidence at the moment that Iran is prepared to compromise on that front. In addition, Iran still has a lot of its ballistic missiles, its proxies are still very active in the region, and Iran is able to threaten its neighbours both militarily and economically. And crucially, the Strait of Hormuz is still closed, a major thorn in the side of President Trump. The reality, though, is President Trump has actually found himself in the middle of an 80-year conflict between Iran and Israel. And the fact that Israel is now capitalizing on the fact that Iran is weakened as a result of the war against it. And once that genie's out of the bottle, it's very difficult for President Trump to put it back in again. What is clear is despite President Trump's positive rhetoric, he has got himself trapped between 2 polar opposing views of the geopolitics of the region. He's found himself in a war that has not been solved in 80 years, therefore it's very unlikely to be resolved in the next few days, despite President Trump's claims.